Alright, so this is going to be a bonus lesson for anyone who's making an office style chair. What I mean by that is a chair with some sort of underneath that has like multiple legs with wheels and this cylinder bit and possibly the handle. So if you made the chair that I just made in part 2, then this doesn't apply to you. Jump to the next video. Cool. But for those who are making an office style chair, let's quickly go through how we would make something approximate to these legs. So let's just view this image and save this into our reference folder because that's always important. So this is office chair ref. So then we will open this so that we can properly zoom into it and examine it as we need to. Cool. So let's jump into our scene here. And so I already saved a version, so I'm just going to hide that, hide that, hide that. So I'm going to jump into my chair and just pretend that I never made the legs. Because if you're making an office chair, the top could be, the top could be any million of things, but what we want to focus on is just this bottom portion. So we'll start off ourselves with a cylinder and bring this up a little bit. And we want to make sure that we are in model mode so that we have our little orange handle to shrink it down and shorten it a bit. Now typically these types of chairs have a bit of a telescoping action in that they sort of, the cylinders sort of sink into each other. So you want to make them kind of step by step get progressively larger. So I'm not sure we'll focus on this square kind of chunk up here. We'll just pretend that we're starting off with the inside of the tube. So we'll make that part kind of short and small. So this will be center tube, and then we'll make another one, just control, drag down, and then make this one wider a little bit. And this chair has 3 segments, so 1, 2, 3. So we're going to replicate that. This one is quite a bit longer than the first segment. And then, so this will be center tube mid, if I can type. Pull that one down, make this one the biggest yet. So that looks pretty close. So we're not going to focus on this rounded center portion, at least yet. We might get to it, we might not sure. So we're just going to jump over that and go directly into the portion that sticks out here. Now you can get as fancy with the modeling on this as you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start myself off. Should probably just start off with this top cylinder. Pull this over here, rotate it 90 degrees, lengthen it a little bit. So we're going to call this leg main. I'm just trying to be descriptive, you know, there's not an exact science, or maybe there is, I don't know, if you're a chair scientist, you know a better word to call this. Spoke maybe, I don't know. But what we want to recognize is that it's got a curved top. In this case, you know, your chair might vary, but in this case it's got a curved top and then it flattens off along the side, and then the bottom is going to be completely cut off. So what we'll do is we're going to make this editable, and the rule with when you make a cylinder editable is you have to optimize it. So we're going to right click, optimize. Now that's just a rule, so just follow it along with me. So we're going to delete most of this cylinder actually, at least along the sort of tube section of it. Now what I want to do is I could just select, actually it's probably easier to select the portions that I want to keep. So I'm going to click some of these. I'm not being terribly precise in counting how far I'm going on each side. Actually, no, I'm about to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Okay, so I have an equal amount on each side. And then I'm going to select these on the end. And I want to delete everything except for these. So I've got a selection made. What I can do is I can invert that selection, which is, you know, like in Photoshop that would be like Control I or something, but in Cinema it's under the U menu. So the U menu is typically reserved for selections, and in this case, because we want to invert our selection, we're looking for the invert tool here. And does anyone want to guess or locate what letter? I, yes. So I for invert. So that inverted our selection, and then now we can delete all of this. So that was easier to do because there was less of what we wanted to keep than there was of what we wanted to get rid of. So now to make this flatter portion on the sides, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that edge there and this edge here, and we're going to extrude these downwards. So we're going to grab our extrude tool, and we're going to click and drag, and these are going some wacky crazy direction. So actually we're going to break a rule that I said. So remember when I said we're using the extrude tool, we don't want to use these arrows. Right, that's typically what I've set up to this point. You want to click and drag to actually make a new portion of geometry. Well, in this case, we actually do want to just drag these down. Now that's a little bit too far. And this looks like it kind of fans out a little bit. So we're going to use our scale tool. Scale this out a little bit, kind of like that. Now, this portion here in the middle is getting a little wacky and out of control. So I'm going to delete these for the time being, and we'll fix it later. So I've got the horizontal sections here, which maybe that's a little bit too long, who knows. I want to connect them along the bottom, and so what I can do is we used the polygon hole tool last time, but that's not going to be the operation that we want to do because we don't necessarily have a hole that the program is going to like interpret correctly, if that makes sense. This is like such a wacky shape that let's just see what happens if we click the close polygon hole tool. I don't even know what it just made. It like turns inside out at the back here, so that's no good. The tool we do want to use is the bridge tool. So that is under M, and then bridge, B for bridge. And again, I'm lying. Okay. So there's one other tool that we can use, and that is the polygon pen tool. Sorry about that. So that is M-E for polygon pen. Now this is kind of like the super tool, the Swiss Army knife. It can do a bunch of tools all in one. So to use this properly in this exact instance, what we want to do is we want to highlight over one edge and then hold Control, and you'll see that the little icon changed. And then if you click and drag from the one flat edge over to the other flat edge, you'll see that it did not quite work. So let's try that again. This one can be a little finicky. There we go. So that time second time's a charm. It connected up on each of the corners, and now we have a flat bottom here. And we can do the same thing just to cover up this front. So again, I want to hold control and drag from this corner to this corner, or sorry, not corner, from edge to edge. So from this edge to that edge, and then from that edge to this edge. And now we've got something that's closed on the front, closed on the front there. So recreating this curvature is going to be a little tricky, so we're just going to kind of do it the simple way. Okay, so if you've followed everything exactly how I've done, which hopefully you have, when you switch to point mode now, which is the third and final selection mode, we've used polygon, edge, and now we're using point mode. We see that we have like these ghost dots. And that is because we deleted part of the cylinder, and cylinders are really cranky, ornery objects to deal with in 3D programs. Don't know exactly why, but all we have to do is just optimize this one more time, and it'll get rid of all those kind of ghost points that weren't doing anything. And we'll just select that edge there, or this point here, this point, and this point. And we're just going to pull these forward a little bit. And we're just going to make a poor man's rounded front. At least in this little quick tip. If you really want to go the extra mile, let me know and we'll figure out what step to do next. So that'll be, I think, good enough for the leg.
Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it's smaller in the front and then it gets bigger?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way where it's easier?
Yeah. So the question was, in case the microphone doesn't hear it, this tapers. The outside edge is smaller, kind of like in circumference, or radius probably isn't the right word, but it'll get the point across. Then over here where it connects to the base of the chair. So that's not too hard. All we have to do is we can use our point selection to select all these points and then just scale these up. And we can just kind of enlarge these a bit and we'll wind up with a shape that looks, you know, pretty good. Close enough. So we'll move on to the wheel now. The wheel again is going to be another kind of weird bunch. We've got kind of like an inverted, almost sort of circle portion. So let's start with a sphere then. Too big. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in. We're trying to make this portion right here, not like the rolly part, but just the part that they connect to and like that they swivel around. I guess that would be the way to describe that. So it has a rounded bottom and then it goes up vertically. So kind of like what we just did with the leg, where we deleted kind of the lower half and we're just taking the curvature of the top. We're going to do the opposite of that. So we're going to take the curvature of the bottom of this sphere and just keep that. So we'll make this sphere editable, and I'm just going to call this like swivel, just because I don't know a better word. So this has a lot of points to select, and it would be a waste of time to go all the way around and select all that. So we're going to use the loop selection tool. So that is under U, and L for loop. So with the loop selection tool, what we can do is we can just select these one ring at a time now. And then these are what we'll delete. So So again, we want to check when we go to point mode, we see that we have these kind of ghost points. We want to get rid of these by right-clicking and optimizing, or UO to optimize. So we can select this with the loop selection tool still active. We can select this edge and then use our extrude tool to again mess up. So we'll just move it up instead, and this will get us pretty close. And then just to make sure that we can't see inside of here, we'll close the polygon hole, and again that is MD, and we'll click to close up that.
How do you get out of editable mode?
You mean?
Like I'm trying to make the ball bigger.
So wait, once you make it editable, you can't go back.
Correct.
Okay, so you can't really.
So if you've already made it editable and you need to resize it, you can go to model mode and then use the scale tool. And hopefully that should get you the same the same effect. All right, so we got the little swivel part made. Let's make these round little wheelie parts, and we're just going to use cylinders. We're going to make little pancakes. I'm just going to jump to my top camera and sort of line it up kind of close to the side of that and rotate it 90 degrees. Bring it over. A little big. Bring it in one direction and not the other. So yeah, there's a bit of a curvature to the front of this. The way we can do that is, I guess we'll do that. So we'll name this wheel and then we'll make it editable. So we want to now go to edge select, and we want to select the outer rim of this. So again, that is the most effective way to select all those instead of just clicking them one at a time, is to use loop select, UL. So we have this bit selected, and does anyone remember what we forgot to do? Because we're working with a cylinder. So I'm about to do something and I have not yet optimized this cylinder. I'm about to have a bad time. So I'm going to go back to model select and UO, optimize it. You won't see any effect, but it's going to save you some headache. So what I want to do is I want to create a little bit of curvature on this outer side here, because this wheel, it kind of looks like those vanilla wafer crackers, kind of, where it's got like a small kind of gradual slope on one side and presumably on the inside it's flat. So we're only going to do this to one side, the outer side. So with this edge selected, what we want to do is M for our modeling tools, and we want to use the Bevel tool, which has the super awesome hotkey of B. Or yeah, sorry, S. Yep. I was going to make that joke where S is not present in the word bevel, and I got ahead of myself. Yeah, so S for bevel, because that makes sense. And then we've got our bevel tool selected, or active. If we click and drag, it kind of did something, but it's not making it very round, kind of along the interior of this. And the reason for that is because this setting right here, which is called offset mode, is set to fixed distance. And if we change it to proportional, and then change this offset percentage up a little bit higher, and then give ourselves 1 or 2 more subdivisions, we'll see that this is looking a little bit more wafer-like. Now, I think I've actually made this a little bit too thin. So I'm going to select these polygons and move them over just to make this a little bit thicker before I try this bevel one more time. So again, that's MS. And that looks a little bit better. It's going to have a little bit more rounding to it. If I switch back to the non-line mode, we can see that that looks pretty round. Although it looks kind of like it's got cuts on it. You can sort of see these edges. And what I want to do is on my wheel, I have this tag, which we're used to working with the material tags, but there have been a number of other tags that have been present all along. We want to click on this one that is these 2 little orange circles. It's called the Fong tag. And what a Fong angle, or what the Fong is it affects if something looks like a hard edge or a round, like smooth surface. And it's determined by this percentage. But we can just uncheck this one check mark. It's pretty easy. So we unchecked the use edge breaks check mark, and now this looks nice and round and happy. So that's wheel 1. We're going to make our second wheel by making an instance, moving it over this way, and then scaling it -1. Nope, we're just going to rotate it 180 degrees. Easy enough. So now the last little bit that we need to make is this kind of front sort of shield bit that helps prevent it from rolling over your toes or whatever, or stuff getting junked up into the wheel. So we'll do that by starting out with the cylinder, and we'll just move this into place, rotate at 90, shrink its width, shrink its radius, and I think we've got the idea here. We actually need to match sort of the positioning of the wheel when we do this. So turn my display line modes back on. So we'll name this shield, whatever. Make it editable. And then, you know, same concept that we've been doing up to this point. We're going to select the parts that we want to keep, which is kind of like this forward, I don't know, sort of quarter circle. And then get rid of everything else. So invert our selection, U, I, delete it. And now it looks like paper thin, which is kind of fine. But if that bothers you, you can give it a little bit of thickness by extruding. So we'll just use our good old extrude tool, D, and then click and drag outwards. And now that has a little bit of an edge to it, which is cool. And I'm just going to move this down just to kind of line it up a little bit. All right, so that's all good. What we want to make sure we do is make all of these wheel and shield parts a child of the swivel. So that way if we want to get really fancy and rotate, rotate the sort of direction that this thing looked like it was rolling in, you know, it rotates nicely, just like that. Okay, move that up into position. And then we'll make the swivel a child of the main, leg main. And so we've got this leg done, which is cool. I'm just going to save as, because it's been a while. Oopsie. So I want to copy this leg 5 times, right? Because my office chair has 5 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. And it's going to be kind of annoying to grab this one, and if you want to break out your calculator to figure out how many times in a 360-degree circle each leg gets rotated. So you can punch in 360 divided by the number of legs, in this case 5, and it'll equal to be 72. So we could just grab each of these legs and rotate it 72 degrees. So if we grab one and then rotate it 72 degrees, and I'm going to do this the wrong way just because I'm going to show us a more efficient way of doing this. Sure, I could, like, you know, go all the way around and do this whole nonsense, but I've got a smarter way to do this. And that smarter way is first making a null, because this null, it's pretty crucial that this null is centered to the center of the stack of cylinders, which it is in this case. If it's not centered, you'll want to zoom in and really make sure you line it up, you know, real close. So this will be leg rotate. Let's call it something. I'm going to make the leg main a child of this null that I just made. And now what I can do is I can use a tool which is called a cloner. And what a cloner is when I make it, in this case, it's very important that I hold down Alt when I let go. So I'm going to let go of my mouse, and it made this cloner, and it made 3 of them. But what I want to make sure that you notice is there's a cloner, and that the leg is now a child of the cloner. You've got to make sure that you set that up right. So if I go to this cloner's object tab, we can see that it is currently set to line mode, and it has a count of 3, which is 3 copies. But we want these to go around in a circle, so we're going to change it to radial. And it made 5 of them, but they're kind of pointing in the wrong direction. So I want to change the plane that those are in. So that looks pretty close. But they're sort of stubby, they're not kind of sticking out the right length. So I want to play with this radius value until they kind of line up right. That looks pretty good. So now I've got my legs. And that will be pretty much where we call it. This was a long quick tip, 29 minutes. So not exactly a quick little thing, but again, it's optional for those people who are doing a computer or office style chair. You know, go ahead, do your materials and make it black or silver or whatever, you know, you're going to do from here. And we'll pick this up on the next class.